Thank you so much. Wow, this guy went on internet to Google me laws and to find more information. Thank you for introducing me. Hi, everyone. I hope you had a good lunch. Uh, I hope I'm not the last one to speak, but I'm so glad to be invited in the second year on humanitarian 12th of university leadership. I'm really happy that I'm here because, each time I stand in front of people, I believe that uh, our outcoming young gingers who can make a difference can speak out what female genital mutilation is. So before I speak about my personal experience or, into on FGM, I just want to give you a little background about female genital mutilation. Female genital mutilation is a cutting that involves no medical reasons, no religious reasons. It's a cultural practice. It's almost practiced 54 countries in Africa, including some Asian countries. Somalia, where I am originated from, FGM is practiced almost 98%. Young girls are cut, age 0 and 11, 12, 13. It has no medical benefit, but the young girls are cut. They can die for bleeding during the cutting. And also, when the girls are growing during the period, they can have some problems with the period. They can have kidney failure. They can have a lot of different issues. Especially when they grow and they become a woman and they got married, they can even die for bleeding. Not only that, when they become a mom and they're giving birth, they are very much at risk to die for bleeding. I was so lucky because I was immigrated in Ireland. I am now proud Irish citizens. Uh, when I thought of back in Somalia, and I think of the women who are lived in this practice rest of their life, including for medical check, medical reasons, for kidney failure, for other different infections. I always say that I was very lucky that I immigrated in Ireland because I get all the medical facility I needed. Especially now, I'm a mother to 4-year-old baby girls. So a baby girl. So when she was born, I remember holding her and thinking about same women that who are in Somalia who cannot have the medical facility I had, who could not have same facility in human rights that every woman have right to access, could not have it. So I am lucky that I find my own voice in Ireland. As even I was not a refugee at the time I spoke about female genital mutilation. You have seen the trailer of the movie. You have seen different captures. The reason I spoke in publicly was first time when I went to hospital. I had to go through a medical check. If you're a refugee or you're asylum and you're going to a new country, you have to go all medical check. When I went to the hospital, I was told that I will be checked um, on my private area, of course. And there was a translator who was a man. I could not actually bear with him because he was a Somalian, and I was very shy to explain what happened to my personal as a woman. It's very hard to explain someone such things. It was very difficult for me, but I have to explain what happened. In same time, when I saw that I was told before I seen the doctors or the nurse to do, they told me that I was going to do smear test. I didn't know smear test was done by women who never been married. In my culture, where I'm from, a smear test taken by women who already been married, a gynecologist visit by women who have been married. So it was very, for me, it was like completely different to go on such things. But same time, I have to agree because if you are in asylum and you want to get the asylum application, then you have to go to medical check, especially when you are under 18. So I agreed to it. Then I remember there was a lot of nurses and doctors, and before I did the check, I meet with consultants, and she was explaining to me whatever disease or whatever sickness I have, I will find the support, medical, Ireland, whatever. And the last thing that keep in my mind was HIV/AIDS, because I was told that even if you have HIV/AIDS, they will be treated, you will be live long life and things like that. So for me, it was very hard to all those when I take in, and I went for medical check, and I went to um, the nursing room, and I was trying to explain the Somali translator. The first thing came to my head was HIV/AIDS is not even like female genital mutilation, because in my culture it was okay to practice. So I ask a lot of questions, but at the same time I have to explain. Then I felt that, if this is something that is being done to young women who are actually in this country, why can we not actually speak? I didn't know that speaking about female genital mutilation would cause me trouble. So I went back to the asylum center where I lived another 18 refugees from different countries in Africa who come from country where FGM is practiced. When I started, and also we did not speak same language because English was our common language, and most of us did not speak English at all. So it was very hard for me even to get the point and explain. Then I felt that it's better I started with the Somalian community. So I went to the Somali community, and then I spoke to them, and I asked every woman if they had a same. I didn't know that speaking about female genital mutilation will cause me any trouble. So when I first speak, there was a media came, and they described me as a, women who against their own culture. And I remember the African article that came out was saying culture clashed, and 18 years old speaking about her own culture. And that was said, the community was against me. So I left the city. I was leaving to another village, and I stayed there for 1 year. After that, I felt that everyone have a voice, and I have a voice, and I have to take that voice with me. So I came back to the city, and I felt that, I will stay here, will remain here, and I want to speak out on female genital mutilation. When I came back to the city, it was even challenge because, every organization that was on the ground that I went for support could not help me. But I never give up. I felt that, do I really want to make a difference? I will make a difference. Because I meet with many women that who have gone through on female genital mutilation, who could not speak publicly. Women who have gone through on female genital mutilation, who could not explain to doctor what they have been through, who have been giving birth on cesarean, and after they give birth to cesarean, they were told, you cannot have a child next 4 years or 2 years. And then, we as Somalis, we love many kids, and every woman have like a football team. So it was very hard to keep it, what the doctor said, to wait for 2 years. Then I started speaking to the Somali women, and really was very hard from beginning. But I said, do I really want to make a difference? And the worst part was when I was described as a victim, not survivor. But everyone on the media was calling me victim of female genital mutilation. Did I really want to stay victim, or I really want to make a difference? I thought I was going to make a change, not a victim of female genital mutilation. So I continue asking the community to help me, but I did not get the support I needed. So I decided that how can I actually get the young people voice into my campaign? Ireland is a small country, but beautiful with good hearts. And I love Ireland, and I'm really proud to say that I'm Irish. I'm an Irish citizen. Even I thought I was not going to Ireland, but now I'm very proud that I represent Ireland as well. So I went to the young people and I said, how can we make a difference? Young people, they joined me, and we started a campaign which called the fashion show to raise awareness, and we called it ethnic fashion show. So we did not actually discriminate anybody who is actually practiced on female genital mutilation, but we invited every nationality who were in Ireland and said, look, let's make a difference. Let's save young girls about female genital mutilation. So we all come together and we start the campaign. My first goal was, how can we make sure that Ireland has legislated on FGM? There was a bill in the parliament over 6 years before I landed in Ireland. So I felt that how can we make sure that this bill go through the parliament? We became allowed, and there was, of course, Labour Party, who we know that they are socialists and they support the community, that I became really friend with. And through the Labour Party, I was so happy to say that in 2012, Ireland have legislated on female genital mutilation. Not only that, the president, who now our current president, during his campaign, I met with him, and the FGM bill was in the parliament. So I make sure that when he became the president, he signed the bill into law, which he did. And I remember the day I was told, one of my good friend who was then Minister of Foreign, a Deputy Minister of Foreign, he called me from Turkey, and he said, Ifra, are you happy the bill is passed? I don't know if I sit down or I was middle of the road. I cried and I felt so happy that Ireland have passed the bill. And then I felt that if I could do something in Ireland, why don't I do it in, Somalia, same. Before I went to Somalia, I became actually European activist. So I went to European Parliament, Home Affairs, and the European Commission to speak same. I believe all of you, you want to make a difference. One day, you may be the leader of your own country. You might be the leader of the global, because when I say global, we know United Nations, anybody can be the leader of United Nations, and that you are the global leader. So I am sure that you spend your own time coming here, you want to make a difference. You want to make a difference to the country you're in or the globally. So for me, I said, if I want to make a difference, I have to continue. In European level, I continued the campaign, and I was so lucky that, I become a non-political background with 68 leaders with, I don't know if you ever heard, what is the Somali supermodel. I was with her, with the 66 world leaders, and sitting together and talking about female genital mutilation. Then I felt that, of course, I can make a difference if I go to Somalia. I went to Somalia. I joined the Somali government as a gender advisor to Minister of Women and Human Rights. And I felt that if I had a voice in Ireland, which I was given it, I could have it same in Somalia. But that was not the case, because Somalia is a country that I left because of the war. The country I left because of the gender-based violence. So I went back there, Somalia. If I ask you one question, is there anything anybody can tell me what they know about Somalia? Anybody? Can you tell me one thing you know about Somalia? Anything? Somebody? Pirate. Anything else? Eh? Yeah, anything else?
I have a great friend, a Somalian friend at University of Sydney, Australia, and also my colleague, and she is a great qualitative researcher working for the rights of women. So, yeah.
Okay. So, like when I speak with the young people and I sit with them, I ask 3 questions. What they know about Somalia? Now, I ask one question and ask, what do they know about Somalia? I get 3 answers. One is a pirate. Second is Al-Shabaab, which is a link with Al-Qaeda. And third, Captain Philip. Who was the Captain Philip? The Somali actor? Okay. So that's the things that people know about Somalia. But there is also other beauty side of the Somalia. Like, I don't know if you guys read the news or not, but Friday last week, there was a massive attack at the Somali beach, where mostly young people go and associate at night to have fun. I think the government, they told us only, what they say, like 40 people killed, but we heard that over 100 people has been killed, 300 people were wounded. So you see, it's very hard, but Somali people are nice people. The food is lovely because, people who, Somalia, they immigrated around the world, especially America, UK, Australia. There are most refugees. Of course, there are many in Europe, but not as America and UK, and Australia. Somali people are very warm, but there are also other issues that we have. Like Somali war started on a civil war. It started within the Somali, and it never ended. It still is there. Unlike, in our government, on a political level, we share something called 4.5. Like, it's a tribalism. Like, I don't believe that to discriminate someone, who they are, is good, but we have agreement of 4.5, like if you're 5, or I don't know. I don't even know myself how it works, but if you are the big majority, you get the biggest positions. If you are minority, you get the lowest. That's how they deal. So I went back to Somalia, and I really wanted to make a difference, especially on female genital mutilation. And that is the country I left as a refugee. That is the country I left because of the violence, because of the war, because of everything. So now, as a young Irish, I decided to go back. When I get my Irish passport, first thing I did was I get actually a sponsor flight ticket to Mogadishu, the first time in long time. So I went to Mogadishu. I stayed in a green zone where, you know, in Somalia, even there is a green zone and the red zone, which you cannot travel. So I stayed in green zone and I meet with a lot of people. And during my time in Mogadishu, I stayed in the camps. When I stayed in the camps, I meet with young girls who were still being cut. Like I remember the day I was leaving, I met with three girls, and the three girls was almost being cut. Then I felt that I have to do something. I have to protect these girls to be cut. So I decided that I took money that I give to my grandmother. Even my grandmother is another story. I took money, I give it to her to actually make sure the girls are safe, which I saved the girl. But giving money to cutters or the family is not a long-term solution. Country like Somalia, where 98% the girls are cut. So I felt that this is not the solution, but I really wanted to protect these three girls. I protected, but I left the country. When I left country, I feel that no, I have to go back to Somalia. Then I moved back to Somalia in 2014. But I moved back with the Somali government, so I was sure that if I'm working with them, I can be safe. So I was working with the Minister of Gender, and still I was doing my own campaign to make sure that the young women, not only female genital mutilation, but also gender-based violence, which is committed every woman in IDP camps, to be safe. So independently, while I was with the ministry, I started my own campaign. I was like, I want to make a difference. So through that, I became known in my own country. And also when I went to Europe, I feel like mixing my Somali Irish culture, dressing the way I want, putting a lot of makeup, which I don't do it anymore because I live now in Somalia, and I used to love football, and I used to watch football every night. I never stopped loving Arsenal. So, and then Italian national team. So I used to love football. And then when I moved back to Somalia, I could not keep going that because, you know, women watching football is not normal in Somalia. So I just feel like, okay, I don't want people to discriminate. Also, when you ask boys to come and watch with them, they will say, why will I watch with women when I can't watch with other guys? So it's really hard. So, but I want to make a difference and I want to stay there. So I stayed. And then through the campaign, working with the minister, I luckily, I met with beautiful, before the movie was made, I met with a beautiful Irish businesswoman in France and Nice, and we were chatting, and she said, do you work with the organization? And I told her, no, I work just myself. And she said, no, this cannot happen. By the time she was on the plane, she set up, and she asked me if I set up an organization, what it will be. And basically, we have a Facebook page, which is under my name, it's IFRA Foundation. Because there were many women in Europe, they were contacting me and say, I want to go to doctor, how can I explain I go through FGM? We had a youth club called United Youth of Ireland. So they say, we want to speak with IFRA, and that's why we created Facebook page, IFRA Foundation. So they know that if they contact, they meet me and they speak with me. Then it became a reality. Now IFRA Foundation was working in Somalia 10 years, which is really good. I'm so happy that at least now I belong to an organization that I work under, and I feel that I am protected under the organization constitution. Through the organization, we became a partner with UNFPA, a United Nations Population Fund, and they were our main partner. And he studied very well when I say it's true because I don't know how he found it. The pledges that made it 82 people around Somalia, like politicians, like activists, like, you know, people, grandmothers, fathers, everyone. So we created something called a Dear Daughter, which is in Somalia, Ga'ala Gabadaydiye. The reason I create is that when I come back from Ireland, I dress, put makeup, a lot of bling blings, and you know, I love like whatever. And then when I went to the women, they were complaining about me, like saying, look at you, you're diaspora, you have this Western mentality and you wanted to change us. So I readopted. Like I said, it was kind of a culture shock for me. to bit, but I readopted again my own community. So I became one of them. And they accepted me as I was. I have to join the whole thing again and, wear all the burqas and cover up and, yeah. When I go to the government, I dress the way I want. When with the community, I dress the way they dress. But that worked for me. So one day I was doing some activities and I was talking to the women. And I said, okay, will you do it cutting your own daughter? And they say, yes, I will do it. Because I was cut, I feel the pain. I want you to feel the pain. And that made me really upset. I said, why do you have to make your own child to suffer when you have been suffering with the pain and the blood and everything? She says, Kumayada, I am going to do it. And that made me even more angry. So I say anger cannot change anything, but I have to create something where the community can understand and we can communicate and work together. So we come up, Dear Daughter is a very beautiful little message about mother making a pledge to her own daughter, saying that she was not educated, she's allowed to get education, she will never cut, she wants to see her daughter to drive her own future and things like that. It worked. A community, we have several IDB camp. IDB camp is a personal displaced people who come from other places. Like, for example, Somalia, not only, but globally now, we know how the climate change has affected to the globe. Imagine the country like Somalia, how it is affected, the climate change, the famine, the floods, the food insecure for, the war especially, like, the government, they decided to take a fight on Al-Shabaab. So there are so many things are happening in the country, and people are dying malnutrition, like babies are dying for that, and there are a lot of things that are happening. And now we are talking about FGM, and also gender-based violence. It's happening in the camps. So we decide to make sure that the female genital mutilation to zero tolerance and plus gender-based violence. Also, the cultural issues in Somalia. I have been attending the court when there is a woman being raped and she brought it to court. And many of you, you're from a country that where culturally is very strong belief. Like, So when they go to court, the rapist is in the room and the victim is there. And they ask the question in front of the rapist. And the mother is there, young brother is there, grandmother is there. And that is not really nice, and it's very bad. Somalia doesn't have any legislation howsoever for sexual violence or female genital mutilation or any rights of the child. Somalia ratified child rights. They ratified child rights. Last week, Somali government, they passed disability rights. But will that actually be, it's passed in law, will it be really in act? Will people actually know till we told them that there is a law? No, they wouldn't. The sexual offense bill has been having so many different views about them within the politician. They use the way they want. But for me, as an activist, I never give up. Even the person who brought me back to Somalia, he's been killed assassination. The woman first I worked with, I don't know, she died a few months ago. But still what keeps me going is that I have a hope. And I believe that hope will one day show me that there is zero tolerance on FGM. Because, since 2008, 2017, 2016, there was every day 2 girls died for bleeding, 3 girls being cut, women died for bleeding. That's what we heard. There was a story about a young woman, a young girl. She was cut in the village. I was in Mogadishu back in 2018. She died for bleeding. As an activist, I said I will not stop or talk about it. I have to go to the place. People were saying, it's very dangerous. You'll be killed, don't go. Even I consulted with my Irish colleagues, friends. They advised me not to go. But I actually went to the village. It was like, I took a plane. It was 1.5 hours. Then after that, we have to drive 3.5 hours on the road. And it was very dangerous because Al-Shabaab was everywhere. But I went there because I really want to make a difference. I know I risk my life. Now now I don't do it. Because now I have a small baby that I gave birth to 4 years ago. And I really want to see that she's growing because I feel like if I die, she will never be safe in this world. Not only Somalia, but in this world. So I want to make sure that I raise her well and she's well protected. But before, I never cared. I could have risked my life. I could have just taken the plane and go. So when I went to the village, I spoke with the grandmother, everyone, and I was asking questions. Why did they didn't do something? They say they take her to hospital. But I went to the hospital. I spoke with the nurses. I said, what happened? How did she die? What caused? The women say that the cause of the death was she lost a lot of blood. And she told me her father, who was there at the hospital, they asked her to donate the blood. He didn't answer yes or no. He was just sitting there. So the women say that if the father donate the blood, she might be alive now. But you know, people who are nomad, who lives in a rural area, they don't know. So I went back to the village again. I spoke with the grandfather. I said, why did you do it? He said, we don't know. We are actually nomad. We don't know nothing about. We live here. Nobody tells us what is good, what is bad. At least he admitted. But one thing made me really uncomfortable was the mother. When I asked, will you do it if you have a daughter again? And she says, yes, I will do it. She even told me when Decca died, they take her clothes and they threw it away. I asked them, why did you throw her clothes? She said, because we didn't want it to see and remember. So you don't want to remember, why do you have to do it again? And you know, I cannot say ignorance, but they are ignorance. They live in that area. What they know is this life they are surrounded. So I'm happy that we are in Somalia through IFRA Foundation making different. Religious leaders never accept me from beginning, but now we are friends because, you know, the most complicated people or community are the religious leaders. Because the religious leaders, they can actually destroy you. They can do whatever they want. But I was so lucky, at least whenever we go on debates on international radios, I tell them, you are our leaders, make the decision for us. Because I want to be friend with them. I don't want to be kicked out of Somalia. So, you know, becoming friend with them allowed me to continue the campaign and the activism. Then there was a young girl, she died again 2021 because same cause of DECA. But DECA's story became a national story and international story. She was 10 years old, and this girl, she was 13. And the 13-year-old girl, she was with her father. She was carrying, because her father was blind. She was carrying the water, whatever he wanted. She was holding his, hand, taking around. And when I didn't meet that guy, but when my colleague, they went there, they asked questions. Would you actually take back if it was not right? He said he would. But now he said that he lost half of his body because she was the helper, and her name was Fartoon. So, you know, since then, now I can say I'm very happy through IFRA Foundation. We did a lot of community outreach, religious leader, elders, and everyone, we campaign. And now, you know, it's a zero death of female genital mutilation, but it's still cutting is there. The worst part now in Somalia is that where they make it, they make now a medicalization. Like, you know, anybody is studying doctor or thinking of becoming a doctor? No? Okay? Yeah, see, doctor is to save a life, not to practice on female genital mutilation. But these doctors, they actually doing the cutting. And whether it's a small or big, it still is a committing a crime. And they are actually against a child's right. But instead of going down, it's a medicalized, they take it now in the hospital. They say, okay, I don't want my daughter to die, but I'm taking to hospital, she will be fine. So that is also another part of, you know, challenges we are facing. But otherwise, you know, the campaign is there. I never know that the pledge will reach over 82,000 because when we started, we didn't know. Now I'm hoping when it reaches 100,000, we can actually ask the government to sign off and legislate the bill. and now we have a male, male minister. A lot of people were against about the male minister, but I welcome the male minister because I'm sure that because already when he became the minister, there is one bill passed at the parliament. So what can they do? Because they give him to make him happy as the minister. He's the minister of women, and him right now is the minister of family affairs and human rights. So he's there. Hopefully he will pass a lot of bills. We will not stop talking to him and drive him crazy. So maybe when he becomes mad about the Somali women and the civil society, he might decide he doesn't want. But we lost a very genuine minister 6 months ago. She was very strong, active on the political over 20 years. She was MB as well, member of parliament. She was a big advocate, and I was lucky and I had a chance to work with her last 12 months since last year. But we lost her before any bill was passed. But the sexual offense bill was brought into the parliament, the cabinet, member of cabinet, they passed the bill on sexual offense bill, but it's not in the parliament because it has to become on law. So maybe I will stop there and you can all ask me questions, anything you want. And also the movie, the trailer you watched is on like in March this year. We decided that it should be on YouTube because the movie was made on education and people to understand. So now the movie is available, it's on YouTube. Over 6 million people have already viewed. So welcome to watch, but make sure you don't forget about IFRA Foundation. And please, please, when you share message to your own platform, it's you raising awareness. If you tell people, what's happening, is people will question, and you can talk about what you know and what you understand. Overall, you're all here to become a leader. It's not easy, but you never give up, because I have been through a lot of mad things. People will actually try to stop you. You want to make a difference, people will actually do whatever they want. But think about why did you choose it, what you have chosen, and what you want to become. Be the change you want to be. I am the change because I'm making difference for women's life. Are we all the changes? Yes. Are we all the changes? Yes. You want to make a really difference to this disaster global that now is going crazy? Yes. Seriously. I don't know if it's the coronavirus or whatever. The world became really mad. Did you all agree? I don't know what happened. Is it COVID has changed the people or humanity or whatever? But nowadays, you don't see any good things around the world. Look at now England. Who watched the news? Did you see what's happening in UK? Anti-immigrant, crazy things. Like, we don't need this. We passed all this a long time ago. So we need, we need to come together. World is ending. So before world ends, let's be all our hands together and be, supportive. But it's mad what's happening. And that is why I feel like sometimes people lost humanity. But we can never lose what we want to make a difference. Are we agreed? Thank you.
Thank you, Ifra.